Hi, I'm Nigel Atherton, the editor of What Digital Camera magazine, and today we're talking about the new Nikon D700 DSLR. It only seems like yesterday that Nikon launched its first FX format, digital SLR, FX format being their full frame, which is virtually the same size as 35mm film. It was the D3, this camera here, and it was hailed by us in our magazine as probably the best digital SLR in the world. For many reasons, including the specification, but mostly the image quality. It was absolutely superb. The drawback of this camera is that it's £3,500 and it's quite a big chunky camera, over 2.5 kilograms in weight. So it's out of reach for most enthusiast photographers. For enthusiasts, it was the D300 was the one to look at. A fantastic camera as well, but the DX format, which is a much smaller APS-C sized sensor, still very good quality. But what Nikon have now done is decided to try and incorporate the best features of the D3 into the body of the D300. Now, wouldn't that be the perfect digital SLR if they could do it? Well, the good news is they have. This is it. It's the D700, and as I said, it incorporates the sensor, processor, and many of the features from the D3, but also, as well as being in the body of the D300, more or less, we'll come to that in a moment, it has a couple of other things from the D300, such as the dust reduction and the built-in flash. Okay, at the heart of the D700 is the same sensor and processor used in the D3. It's a 12.1 megapixel FX format CMOS sensor, which is virtually full frame. But even though it's full frame, it only has 12 million pixels on it, which is not that many for a sensor of that size. But the benefit of that is that because the pixels are therefore that much larger, that the light gathering power is greater and the image quality in low light conditions is unlike anything seen before. And in fact, you can shoot at up to 25,600 ISO, which is unbelievable, really. The D700 is virtually identical to the D300, and it's only when you put them next to each other that you see that the D700 is in fact very slightly larger, particularly in the prism, which obviously has to incorporate the full frame viewfinder. From the D300, there are a couple of features that the D700 has taken. Not all the features have come from the D3, and there are some features on the D300 that aren't in fact on the D3. Chief among these is the dust reduction system, which the D300 has, but the D3 doesn't, and this is on the D700. Also, of course, there's the built-in flash, which is on the D700 as well. It's from the D300. After so many years using a DX format digital SLR, you really do notice the difference when you switch to an FX format one. This lovely big viewfinder, it's so big and so bright, it's fantastic. And that user experience is also repeated when you look at the LCD screen. It's the same high resolution 920,000 dot LCD screen as used on the D300 and D3, which lets you really zoom in really close and look at that detail. It's a great viewing experience, this camera. You get plenty of viewing options on the back, as with all similar DSLRs. You've got the histogram option, the highlight flashing warning option. For those not familiar with the Nikon digital SLR system, here's a brief tour of the buttons and functions. And anyone who has used Nikon before will pretty much recognize most of these. On the right hand side, above the grip, is the shutter release button, surrounded by an on-off button. There's also a light for illuminating the LCD data display. Behind that, there's the mode button, which, when you turn it on, lets you select which exposure mode you're on: aperture priority, shutter priority, program, manual, etc. And then to the right of that is the exposure compensation control. The LCD data screen displays all the relevant information that you need, including exposure information, number of frames, battery status, your white balance, and your quality settings, and any exposure compensation that you may have applied. To the left of the prism are various other controls. There's 3 buttons on the top. The first one is the quality setting, which lets you select whether you want fine, normal, or basic JPEG, RAW, TIFF, or combinations of those. The white balance control is for the preset white balance settings. And then the ISO button, which starts at 200, although there is a low, 2 low settings, and right up to the top, we go right up to the top, 6,400 is the highest native ISO, but then again you can go up to 25,600 ISO. Underneath that there's a collar which lets you select single frame shooting, low speed continuous shooting, high speed continuous shooting, live view, self timer, and the mirror up position. On the back, the layout is fairly familiar again to Nikon cameras. On the top left hand side there's the review button which lets you play back pictures you've taken. To the right of that is the delete button for deleting pictures that you don't like. The menu is to the left of the LCD screen, and again that's divided into various settings on the left, same Nikon system that they use generally, playback, shooting, and then different custom settings, setup menu, retouching, and then my customizable my menu. And below that there's a lock button to lock pictures that you don't want to be deleted. And then you have the magnification, minus and plus, and an OK button. To the right of the LCD screen you've got your four-way controller. There you go, it gives you various viewing options here. This is where you can select whether you want to show your histogram, etc. And then below that you have you can lock that, by the way, there's around here, you can lock that so you don't knock it accidentally. And below that you have the focus point selector, so you can select various groupings of focus points, all of them or just the center section or somewhere in between. And at the bottom there's the info button which displays all your shooting information. And on the top there, to the right of the viewfinder, there's the A lock and focus lock button up here. There's around that there's a little dial which lets you select the metering mode, spot meter, matrix metering, or center weighted metering. And to the right of that you've got an AF on button. If you're in manual focus you can press that to activate the autofocusing. And on the far right you've got an input dial. There's one on the back and one on the front, so you can have one for aperture, one for shutter speed, or you can select which one does which. To the left of the viewfinder eyepiece there is a viewfinder switch, so if you're using the camera on a tripod you can block that off so that no stray light comes in and influences your meter. And then on the right here, which you may be able to see here, is the diopter eyesight correction, which is done on most cameras.